guess we could get this meeting started. Welcome to the reconvening of the December 1st meeting of the Eureka City Council. We have a couple items on the agenda tonight, and we will start with a roll call.
Mayor Seaman?
Here.
Councilmember Castellano?
Here.
Councilmember Messner?
Here.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Here.
Councilmember Allison?
Here.
Councilmember Burgell?
Here.
All right. We are going to move the budget report up on the agenda and get that first. Finance Director Millar is here, and I believe you're ready to present.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. I will share my screen. Tonight's report has to do with the fiscal year 2019-20 budget. Just a somewhat brief overview. We are going to compare what we budgeted versus what actually happened at the end of June 30th, 2020. This is not the budget that we adopted during the 18-19 fiscal year. This is what we amended back in February. We will begin with the general fund, and then I will go through the enterprise funds, including water, wastewater, the harbor fund, and building. And then we will review the internal service funds as a whole. That includes equipment operations, risk management, infotech, general government and administration, as well as facilities operations. So to begin, the general fund, we're going to start with revenues by type. So as you can see on the left-hand column, those are the different types of revenues that we have in the general fund. Next to that is the 19-20 amended budget. And then we have actual expenditures. Next to that, I'm comparing the actual to the budget. A number in parentheses is a negative number. For revenues, that's a bad thing. And then you have the variance to the right. That's the rate of change between the actual and the budget. Overall, in the general fund, we saw a negative 3% variance, roughly $900,000, a $900,000 deficit from the budget. This is actually not as bad as we assumed when COVID hit, so that is good news. But in other cases, like when you look at charges for services, you'll notice a big negative variance. Really, where that came from is most of our community services programs, such as the zoo or our sports leagues or other recreational programs. When the shutdowns happened, you can imagine that, took a big hit to our revenue stream. So that's really why we saw that big variance. And then when you look at the fines and penalties category, what's interesting is we actually saw an increase in criminal fines. We saw a big decrease in court fines. And you can imagine that, the court system is not as efficient in the shutdown. So we might see an increase in future fiscal years.
Well, compared to the 6.5 hour one on Tuesday, it's going to be true.
Next, I will drill into the tax type. The most surprising thing that I found in the budget numbers is that we actually ended the year with more sales tax than we assumed we would have when we budgeted back in February. I cannot explain why that is. It's counterintuitive to me, but so is the stock market right now. I think there's different stories to be told in those numbers. Certain businesses did very well, but as we look at Old Town, the smaller guys, they did not do very well. That's very unfortunate, and we should look at ways to help that sector of our business community. The biggest variance, or biggest negative variance, had to do with TOT, or transient occupancy tax. This was expected. That's as bad as I thought it would get. If you look at that under number, that's about how much revenue we expect in that final quarter of the fiscal year. So it's almost like we lost the entire quarter in terms of revenue here. And the other categories, they saw some negative variances, but nothing substantial in my opinion. Next, we will move on to expenditures by department. This was relatively good news. Really across the board, we saw savings. We added an extra $300,000 to our bottom line due to savings. In some cases, like development services, they saw substantial salary savings. And then in public works, they really had savings across the board, but mainly in materials and supplies. Next, we will compare our revenues to the expenditures. You can see under that budget column that we anticipated a big deficit. And what actually happened was even worse deficit, but we were expecting, upwards of a $3 to $4 million hit to the bottom line. So in some ways, this is a good story. Okay, we will move into the enterprise funds. Remember, enterprise funds, they are kind of like a business. Unlike the general fund, who receives tax revenues by doing absolutely nothing, these enterprise funds actually have to provide a service to get money in. We'll start with the water fund. So the water fund really has two types of revenues. Charges for services has to do with revenue we receive from your utility bills. We also receive roughly $400,000 to $500,000 from HCSD, or Humboldt Community Services District, for wholesale water that we treat. On the other revenue category, you'll notice a big positive variance. That has to do with interest earnings. So even though rates are relatively low, the water fund, sometimes known as the Bank of Water, has over $10 million in cash. So even with low interest rates, we still see a fairly sizable revenue from interest. When we look at departments or expenditures by departments, the biggest department is obviously Public Works. Their their transmission and treatment divisions are in there, and they're the biggest categories. Overall, very little variance in this fund. We did a good job budgeting. As you can see, less than 1% is what we were off. When we're looking at the bottom line, we expected roughly $700,000 of surplus in this fund. We actually had about 1.3 million. You might be wondering why we produce such a healthy profit. That is because that money is then used for our CIP projects. Following the water fund, we have the wastewater fund. Essentially, it's the same thing as water, where most of the revenue is coming from your utility bill. We do get a, roughly 1.3 million from Humboldt Community Services District for treatment services. One, cool thing about this 1920 was that due to the Vigo Street development, as well as the new veterans housing, between those two projects, we received about close to $500,000 for what is called a sewer impact fee, or a sewer connection fee. So as you can see, with Vigo Street, what was great about that development is that it should produce, a sizable amount of sales tax, but on top of that, it also supports our utilities. When we look at expenditures by department, again, it's a similar story to the water fund. In this case, Public Works has the collections division as well as the treatment plant division. We actually saw a little bit more budget savings in this fund, which is always a good thing. And then when we look at the bottom line, we anticipated about 3.2 million in surplus, and that actually grew to almost 3.9 million. The wastewater system is a little bit different in terms of infrastructure needs. The wastewater treatment plant is a much more complex operation than, say, water treatment, and therefore our capital needs are greater. And that's why you see such a healthy surplus, is because we have a lot of maintenance and upgrades that are needed at the treatment plant. Next, we have the Harbor Fund. The Harbor Fund did okay, a negative 1% variance. You might be wondering what that intergovernmental revenue is. So back when the redevelopment agency was still around, it essentially backed bond debt for the Harbor Fund. And when the redevelopment agency went away, the state stepped in and said that they would cover that bond debt. So essentially that is revenue coming from the state to cover our debt service. On the expenditure side, this is one fund that actually went over budget by 5%, which is kind of a lot. The Harbor Fund tends to have issues covering costs. That's not unusual. I think that's just, the reality of running a harbor. But with the 21-22 budget, I believe we can correct this and put it in a better position than it's been in the last 10 years. Overall, we anticipated a deficit, and unfortunately that grew. We will explore the Harbor Fund in more detail come the mid-year process. And then we have the Building Fund. The Building Fund has two main divisions. We have, building regulation. That's where we have building inspectors and people that check plans. That has done very well in the past few years. We've issued a lot of permits. A lot of that has to do with those big projects, as well as the cannabis industry. On the other division, which is code enforcement, it's not something that pays for itself right away. Typically, we see revenues from code enforcement actions. Typically, they take a while to come in. And especially this year, we budgeted about $300,000 in code enforcement revenues, and that hasn't showed up. So that's why you see that big negative variance. Over time, we should expect more revenue in the future. It really has to do with a timing difference here. Next, we have the expenditures by department, and you can see the two divisions. They both did go over budget. That's okay because we did have some extra revenue to offset that. We're optimistic at the beginning of the year when we did the budget, but ultimately we did see a big deficit. We will explore the Building Fund again during the mid-year process and look for ways to right that ship. Next, we will go into the internal service funds. I'm displaying this information as a whole. The internal service funds is comprised of roughly 5 funds with very different operations. Their revenues are, those are charges for services, but that has to do with us charging ourselves. So if you take something like the city manager's office, what we do is we charge out the city manager based on budget size. So our biggest, revenue, or our major revenue streams come from the general fund as well as water and wastewater. So this is all, I don't want to say make-believe revenue, but it's trying to capture essentially a cost, and this is how we reimburse that cost. When we look at expenditures by function, overall, we saw a very small variance. In some cases, the fund did have a surplus or a budget savings. In other cases, such as risk management, we went over budget. This isn't unexpected. At times we do have costs that come up unexpectedly. And for risk management, we've seen a big increase in general liability insurance as well as workers' comp. So what we'll do in that case is we'll begin to charge the funds, or the water and the wastewater fund as well as the general fund, even more in the future to make up for that deficit. When we look at the bottom line, we expected a surplus. We ended with a deficit of about $100,000. Given that it's a $10 million budget, that is not, that's not a very large deficit, I guess. Anyways, that concludes my presentation tonight. At the next council meeting, we will look at the 2021 fiscal year and more specifically our revenue and more specifically sales tax. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
So I have two quick questions, and I guess probably one of them you'll talk about more with the revenue is where all the CARES Act money went. So that'll be next time.
Yeah. So
Okay.
CARES Act in terms of like what we've received from the state, and
Yeah, that would have been a revenue. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other question was, and I don't know if you'll have the answer, but the property tax was lower than we expected. I don't understand why. That's just a curious thing for me, unless people aren't paying their taxes, but they'll have to pay them eventually.
so that is a good question. So redevelopment or the successor agency, over time, it starts to pay off its debts. And when it pays off the debt, that means the state no longer has to provide the entity with money to cover the debt service. So when that happens, it goes back into the main pot and it gets distributed to, the city, the county, as well as the school district. So and it's called the redevelopment agency residual. We expected more revenue in that category, and that just didn't show up. So it wasn't, what comes from your property tax bill.
Okay.
That's kind of hard to forecast.
That at least clarifies it for me a little bit. Does anybody else have any questions? Councilmember Arroyo?
I know you touched on the income from the development of Vigo Street, but could you hone in on that a little more? I know it's a common source of community questions, is how is that particular project producing as far as sales tax revenue?
I cannot give you insight into that. I cannot share sales tax data at that level without making sure that I'm not disclosing sensitive information. I can tell you that it added to our tax base, but I can't tell you to what extent. So, yeah, that's as far as I can go, I guess.
I understand that. I guess I'm just wondering how we'll internally track this promise the developer made that if the sales tax didn't meet the cost of the investment that the city put in, that they would meet that cost within a certain time frame. So I just wanted to see, maybe we don't need to be sharing all of their regular sales tax data for that specific site, but how will we know whether we've kind of where we stand there?
I mean, I can answer yes or no questions, so I can look into that, and at some point I can tell you when that has, when the cost benefit has been met.
That would be great. Yeah, it would be something I'd like to keep tabs on. And if that's sensitive information that can't be shared in this context, maybe staff can work with them to make sure that objective is met. Thank you.
Yep.
On that topic, so that was a deal specifically with one of the tenants of that development, right? Not all of the tenants?
It was the developer who promised that.
Okay, that was before I got there, so. Thank you.
Yeah, it was the developer of the property, not the leaser.
Okay, so it wasn't one business there. They're looking at all the sales tax derived from all of the businesses that are in that whole center.
That's what I recall. Is that accurate, staff?
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I remember as well. Yes.
That was the meeting before I got here. We always take care of big stuff like the meetings before people. There's a big changeover, so I missed that. Lovely, lovely vote.
I do have a lot of confidence that it will pay for itself.
Excellent. Councilmember Castellano.
Just a quick question. You mentioned a couple of times, that we're accruing money from water and wastewater because of the need to make improvements. I think this is probably in the capital improvement plan, but do you have a recollection of like how much those improvements are slated to be over the next, 5 years?
So
It's okay.
So in January, we'll come and present the 21, 22, CIP. And during that time, we will be easily able to answer that question.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I will ask out of formality, do we have any public comment on this? All right. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for comments, and we're just receiving the report, so I don't think we have to do anything. So anybody have any comments about this? All right. Thank you very much. That's all we need to do, right? Lane, for hanging in there and coming back twice to give us that. It's important stuff. And
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Lane.
Thank you.
And now we will move on to the next item, which is one that we continued conversation from the last meeting. It's the reconsideration of the memorandum or the agreement between the city and Hatcher. So do we have an updated presentation? Thank you, Ms. City Manager Slattery.
You guys will get used to it, hopefully. Good evening, Mayor and council members. At the previous council meeting, it was discussed that staff, as well as Councilmember Burgell, would meet with Hatcher to have a discussion if there's something that can be done in the interim period between now and when we're able to complete CEQA and have an updated ordinance to further address issues associated in the past with Hatcher and their operations, on top of the fencing and the monitor that would go in place. So we met yesterday. It was myself, Councilmember Burgell, Executive Director Allen from Hatcher, as well as two board members, Tia and Jarrett. We had a healthy back and forth and had a lot of discussion as to things that could happen that could potentially help. It boiled down to, at the end, requesting that Executive Director Allen go back to the board with a request to limit the hours of the syringe exchange portion of their services, and also to hire a security guard as opposed to just to monitor. The hours that we were that was requested to see if they would change to would be a Tuesday and Thursday operation as opposed to the current operation. Executive Director Allen went back to the Hatcher board, proposed this to them today, as a matter of fact, I believe this morning, and the Hatcher board made a motion and unanimously decided that they declined to alter the agreement to reduce hours or hire a security guard. And that was unanimously approved by their board. So the Hatcher's board is not interested in or willing to make further modifications based on that discussion. So I have Executive Director Allen here to also fill in some more information from their side.
Thank you, Executive Director Allen. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you, City Manager Slattery. I have prepared a statement that I will now read. Esteemed colleagues, I want to begin by thanking City Manager Miles Slattery for working with us to come up with a well-crafted and mutually agreeable mediation settlement. The process was arduous, but I feel that it has built solid trust between Hatcher and the City Manager. I also feel that it has moved us towards some solutions which, while perhaps not perfect for either side, has laid solid groundwork for what may come. I want to also thank Councilmember Kim Burgell for her past support of Hatcher, our mission, and our population. Let's begin with the agreement. The mediation agreement that was built between City Manager Miles Slattery and myself on November 6, 2020 includes a move to mobile-only SSP services by June 1st, 2021. Hatcher having an outside investigator in the building in order to oversee operations at times agreed upon by the city and Hatcher, quarterly reports to be delivered to the City Council at regularly scheduled meetings, installment of a fence as a view screen, and hiring of a monitor trained in de-escalation techniques who would be tasked with keeping program participants to their service agreements with Hatcher, including making sure no illegal drug use or sales happened on site, something that is currently done by staff members. All of these measures are more than any other organization in the business or any other organization or business in the city is required to take, but we are being responsive to the needs of the City Council and the community. Though Hatcher has taken every step requested by City Council, this agreement was not endorsed by the City Council meeting on Tuesday. In an effort to move beyond the impasse, yesterday, myself and two Hatcher board members met with City Manager Slattery and Councilmember Burgell to discuss Burgell's concerns with the proposed agreement. In that meeting, Councilmember Burgell proposed that in addition to what is outlined in the mediation agreement, that Hatcher either cease all SSP operations until June or drastically reduce hours, preferring the idea that SSP services be by appointment only, and further requested that we hire a uniformed licensed security guard. Myself and the board find these additional requests to be reckless and untenable. First, reducing current SSP hours of operation would have a profound negative impact. The COVID-19 pandemic and the protocols associated with it are having numerous and substantial effects on our population. Additionally, California Department of Public Health, CDPH, has recently sent out a vulnerability assessment that shows an increased risk for HIV and hepatitis C infection in Humboldt County, as well as increases in overdose rates. If anything, we should be increasing our SSP hours in order to address the needs of our participant population. Further, it is the dead of winter. Our program participants get access to basic needs services, which each time they come in to do a syringe exchange. This reduces harm to each individual who enters our program. When a participant comes to do an exchange, we offer food, socks, warm clothing, blankets, and more. While the syringe exchange is often the motivation for participants coming to our site, participants get so much more care than that when they avail themselves of Hatcher's services. Our population needs, as we all probably understand, more access to services, not less. Councilmember Burgell made the request that we make SSP services available only by appointment, which many in our when many in our population do not even own a phone. Perhaps it is challenging to understand what it means to be homeless or what it means to meet people where they are. As a harm reduction agency, it is our mission to serve people with a non-judgmental advantage and to meet them where they are. We will not meet this goal by reducing hours for SSP services, nor by requiring adherence to unrealistic barriers. Additionally, Councilmember Burgell demanded that Hatcher hire a licensed uniformed security guard instead of hiring a monitor trained in de-escalation techniques. Our population has a history of trauma at the hands of uniformed authority figures. We are not interested in implementing the threat of violence to our population via the presence of a licensed and armed security guard. We are confident that the presence of a uniformed guard would have a chilling effect on participation in our program on the part of our participants. We are interested in collaboration with our program participants, not intimidation toward them. Further, armed guards are often undertrained and overconfident. This is a bad mix in any case, but especially horrible when interfacing with a population known to have higher rates of PTSD and who are experiencing the effects of ongoing trauma. Armed guards are known to have little training in de-escalation and to resort to the use of violence and intimidation instead of working to reduce risk of negative interaction. Social workers are known to be trained in compassionate de-escalation techniques and to work from a trauma-informed perspective. Our monitor would be hired with a trauma-informed perspective in mind and would work to engage our program participants in problem solving and adherence to agreements from a collaborative frame. Since becoming the executive director at Hatcher last July, I've stood by my open door policy. If you want to talk with me, all you need to do is reach out via email, phone call, or text. I will schedule a Zoom meeting or phone call with you, and as the pandemic resolves, we can get back to in-person meetings. You will once again be welcome to tour our facilities, to see how we administer services, and meet our staff and engage with our participants. I have worked hard to proactively respond to community and council concerns. Hatcher has done everything requested of us and, I believe, shown a good faith effort to be collaborative partners despite past challenges. While we decline Councilmember Burgell's demands, we remain open to working with the council and the city manager toward mutually agreeable solutions, which are our mission, and that work in a realistic way for our population. This is a bump in the road, but not the end of it. We look forward to seeing what comes next. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so with that, I will see if anybody has any questions about the report. Councilmember Burgell. Oh, you have to unmute.
I'm sorry. Were you talking about questions right now?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
we had a report. I'm assuming that we'll ask questions about that.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Councilmember Arroyo.
I was just wondering if Councilmember Burgell, if you could share more about your thinking and sort of I mean, I have heard a lot of background on this topic, but I'm curious about why those specific parameters were important to you.
Sure. So, you know, we don't have a plan for the next 6 months. As I told you at the last council meeting, I support the settlement agreement. I think it's a great agreement. I think that that we could potentially move forward if that was possible. So what concerned me, as I talked about last meeting, was the next 6 months and how we were going to mitigate things without much regulation. Was it business as usual, or how are things going to change? So the things that I came up with were this business of, I did not say appointment only as the only, I mean, I did say that, but I was willing to look past that as well. But it was important to me to cut the hours because there are two reasons. One, I feel like, again, it has to do with trust while we figure out what's going on with CEQA. And secondly, they had talked about, you know, the cost of a security guard also was expensive. And so by cutting hours, that could mitigate some of those costs. Secondly, the reason that I brought forward a security guard instead of a a monitor for the next 6 months, for the interim period, is because from the interim period, we don't really have anything that suggests that any change needs to happen. And for the neighbors who call me regularly, I don't know about the rest of you if you get calls, or if you get calls from the rest of the city, but from their perspective, they are completely done. So my thought was, if we had an actual security guard during times when they were open and doing the exchange, that might appease the neighbors until we were able to get the CEQA in place, create the new ordinance, and move forward. So that was my thinking around that. I also believe strongly, and I hope that regardless of what happens, they remain open to provide the services that people need. We talked about this: underwear, socks, food, wound care. Those kinds of things are critical. And I hope that they will continue to move forward. So those were my options. My options were, as Director Slattery said, and so did Director Allen, that we, for the next 6 months, until we get things dialed in, that we limit hours and for the SEPs and have a security guard, or we stop the SEP completely and just allow them to do business that they already do until we get things dialed in with CEQA and get the new ordinance in place. So that was my thinking behind that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. It does. I do want to really genuinely hear you. I feel like we didn't have the ideal circumstances to really hear each other on Tuesday. But that brings up a follow-up question for me about the statement that nothing's going to happen in the next 6 months. But my understanding was that the fencing and the on-site monitor would happen sooner if the agreement were enacted. Can folks address that and timeline? Sure.
I could speak to that as well. So again, those things are great. But the problem is that we've had 4 years of what's been happening. No, it's only been 2 at this location. At the other location, there weren't a lot of issues that I recall. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't recall that. But at this new location, people are very concerned about their safety and so many things. And so, yes, a fence, yes, a monitor, but until we have, they don't want to have a SEP in that space at all. They want to have it, mobile, if you talk to the neighbors in the surrounding region. So I was trying to come up with a compromise that would benefit both parties. So the 6 months is the time the timeline that they are saying that potentially they will have the mobile SEP running.
So I also want to give Executive Director Allen a chance to answer that. Because she looked like she had something to add.
I just wanted to add, 1, changes have already been made, and 2, they'll continue being made. We are, as I said on Tuesday, having people move along once they've gotten their services. We don't have a population, spending time in the parking area. We also are willing, if CEQA, if the CEQA process goes more quickly and we can get the funding to get the vehicle, we are willing to step up our process in going mobile only with, I can't overcommit, but, with the hope of potentially going mobile only as soon as March if CEQA were cleared. That is the acceleration that we're talking about. instead of June. And so I feel like we're doing a lot to rise to the necessity of the situation. I also feel like having a monitor on site who's there not just part of the time, but all of the open hours would do what we would hope a security guard would be able to do without the residual trauma to our population.
Okay, Councilmember Burgell.
I'd just like to speak to that. When we talk about people not loitering and moving them along, we're currently in a pandemic. And so my concern, again, would be if we were not in a pandemic, if it wasn't a requirement for people to be safe to move along, would that have changed? And again, I realize that the trust has been broken and it's going to take a while for me to be willing to trust that you do what you say. And it's not you, Director Allen, it's the actual organization. I mean, we've been on this road over and over and over again. And again, I would say that with COVID, certainly you're moving people along. Certainly you are, moving the process, faster. But if COVID hadn't happened, would that be the same situation? And then the other thing I would like to say is this morning I did make some calls to just check in with our police department to see, because I remember you mentioned that, people were saying how good, the relationship was becoming with the police department. And, when I talked to CSET, they had told me there was no change. They didn't see a change. And so I'm wondering, I'm not clear where you're getting the information. So, I've done my homework and I'm concerned about what may or may not happen in the future.
Because I checked before this started, you can actually make comments now too, because this is a continuation of our discussion. So Councilmember Messner, and then Councilmember Allison after.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple questions that I actually have for Attorney Black. I was curious if the proposed mediation agreement that was actually voted down on Tuesday night, if that particular agreement that stands, because there was no, there has been no adjustment to that, it sounds like. So if that particular agreement would function as a new authorization for Hatcher in this particular instance, is that what it is until another document is voted in? I'm just curious about that.
I don't think that it would function as a new authorization for Hatcher. It would function as a proposal to modify Hatcher's operations, then to be implemented or sustained by an ordinance amendment, or conceivably an amendment to our outstanding resolution. But I don't believe the mediation agreement is a new authorization unto itself.
Okay, well, it is a little confusing because we did remove the previous one. So since there is none right now, then it would seem to be a new one in some way. I guess that's why I'm a little confused by it. And I know that that was the goal, was to create something that was a new authorization and a new way to move forward. But we're definitely not in that place yet. We clearly are not ready for that. And things aren't, in that space yet. And so there is a waiting period, which is exactly what Councilmember Burgell's to. And so during this time until a mobile SEP, which was what our preference was, to be removed from that location. I think that from my perspective, it seems like it would be wise to not have a SEP in place until we have a solid idea of how that should be. It would make sense to wait on that piece because we've already determined it's not working where it is and that it needs to be mobile. And so since that's going to take time, then it would make sense that we would then be waiting until that can be put into place. So there, are other places where they are doing needle exchange, Aegis being one, right? The county being another. So there are other places, and these things aren't happening there. These aren't problematic in these other spots. So it would make sense to stop the SEP now until we can put a solid plan in place that the city has decided would be a good plan for a SEP in our city.
Before we move on to Councilmember Allison, I just want to see if I could clarify something. What we removed was a resolution, not an ordinance. So the ordinance is still in place. And so all we could do is either remove the ordinance, which is getting rid of all SEPs, or kind of take this agreement. I'm trying to see if that's the question you had, Heidi.
I can speak to it. So what we did with the resolution initially prior, at a previous council meeting was we repealed and replaced it. So while we took away the old one, we replaced it with a new one that basically wasn't specific to any particular organization, but just demonstrated council support for SEPs. The ordinance has been in place since 2018 and hasn't been adjusted since.
Okay.
Yeah. So support of SEPs, but not.
Yeah.
That's how I understood
doing
it.
the SEPs. Yeah.
And Councilmember Burgell is about to lose it, I think.
I know she is. Okay. It was supposed to be Austin next, but go ahead if you have something quick to add.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kim.
You have to unmute too.
Thank you. I do have something quick to add, because what I would like to see us do actually is repeal and replace the resolution we had before to state that though we do support SEPs, we want to suspend all SEPs until we get CEQA figured out and a new ordinance in place. Once those two things are in place, I would love to see us send out an RFP, which Hatcher can apply for a syringe exchange in the city.
Order of action, I don't
Is
think
that
that
something we could do about?
this isn't on the agenda, and so that is not pertinent to this meeting. That would have to be an agenda's decision.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So Councilmember Allison?
Gosh, these last council meetings sure are complicated with all the rules and laws and things like that. So we're definitely going out with a bang here, Heidi and myself. But yeah, I personally am in favor of putting SEPs on pause for now. I did not really like the mediated outcomes, and I guess that I say that because I have problems with trusting Hatcher. I have trust issues, and it's just because of years of experience, hoping that Hatcher would be proactive in dealing with neighborhood and community issues, and they never really were too proactive about things. To hear that, they potentially had funding the whole time to put a fence up around the building just really upsets me, because that could have saved a lot of issues and headaches and their own sort of, community cries from the public and neighbors. So yeah, maybe if what Kim wants, we'd have to say in council reports to create a new agenda item. And I'm for that, but yeah, this time I'm still not sure about voting in favor of this mediated outcome.
Okay, Councilmember Castellano first.
Well, I would be happy to go after Director Allen. I know Director Allen wanted to, I think, reply to something, and then I could go if that's okay.
Of course, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Go, Director Allen.
No worries. I have a few things. One, we have not had funding available for a fence, and we are currently looking for funding for the fence. We have, based on the mutual agreement of the city and Hatcher, we would be able to get funding for the fence, but we will not get funding for the fence without that agreement in place. We have moved forward in good faith toward what we heard requested by the city council, which was to move operations to a mobile only delivery. This is not best practices. Having a brick and mortar and mobile would be best practices because it would increase the viability of access. We, as far as the question of who said that we were doing a good job with keeping people moving along and toning the presence down in the neighborhood, that was Sergeant Hill, who had a conversation with my SSP coordinator and my director of programs. And he's the one who has been engaged directly with Hatcher for a while now. And he's the one who gave us feedback that we were doing a good job. So that is from his mouth to our ears directly. There are other things, but I didn't write them down. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Councilmember Castellano, and we'll take it from there. But I appreciate the conversation. I hope that folks will continue moving forward and that we can reach some kind of resolution that ends up with our population still getting the services that they need.
Thank you. Councilmember Castellano.
I think firstly, I want to appreciate the mediation that happened. I know that that was not an easy process for our staff, for Director Allen, for the number of people who are involved, and it took quite a bit of time and effort and money just to get it to happen. And once I heard the results, I personally was like, wow, things really, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually felt a lot of gratitude for the movement that had been made, because to me, this marked the beginning of planning towards some really significant changes on the part of Hatcher. And as someone who has worked for and with nonprofits and organizations for many years, I know that changes like that can take a while to implement. And I feel like people who are at the city probably understand that too. I mean, there's projects that I brought up, at council when I first got here 2 years ago that have, been in the works for 1.5 years. And, and that's, building, like talking to community partners and things like that as part of the process. Sometimes I am impatient about that. I'm like, hey, I want to see like our zero waste plan, sorry, I don't mean that in a mean way, but I'm excited to see those things. And also like, I know that for it to be done well, sometimes it takes time. And I would like to, I've heard from community partners who are ready to fund these things, and to get these changes going on. And I feel like it's really important for the city to also, for me as someone who was part of requesting this to happen. You know, I respect the agreements that were made in the mediation. You know, I know that probably that's the nature of mediation, is like, you know, probably from all perspectives, it's not like what any one person would think is their ideal solution, you know, and that is what a mediation process is it's the like give and take of finding what's workable right now. And that's what I think we have, is something that's workable right now that, you know, I bet if you were to ask Director Allen like 2 months ago, if they thought moving to an all mobile SEP was a good idea, they probably would have said no, you know, I mean, and not to say that like one person was wrong or whatever, but just that there's been things are being given up, and change is happening. And I believe in that. And I believe that like what we have is really good and strong, and yes, imperfect in some regards, as our world is, you know, and that like we have to keep moving in order to like reach like what we want to attain, strive towards. And I feel like this is only going to like make things take longer and keep us from moving as quickly as we would like to.
Okay, Director Allen, and then Councilmember Messner.
I remembered what the other things that I wanted to add were, as far as I know, Aegis does not do syringe services, and the county is currently not working at capacity due to COVID. So a lot of the weight of the SSP services have been on Hatcher through the period of COVID. Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Councilmember Messner, and then Councilmember Arroyo.
All right, so I think this meeting is to determine whether or not we're going to change the vote of what we had agreed on, which was not agreeing to it, and then we would have to agendize something else if we were going to do that. Is that correct? Just want to clarify if that's what the purpose of this meeting is.
Is that going to be the process if we continue with this vote?
Director, yeah.
Yeah, Director Slattery or City Clerk, or Bob.
So yeah, Councilmember Messner is correct that that is the intent of this meeting. I don't, as far as agendizing things, I mean, that can be done in different ways, but yeah, the intent of this meeting is to discuss whether or not what was voted on last time is something council is willing to change.
Okay, so the a couple things. One is so for me, you know, it's been 4 years and I've been in multiple mediations with Hatcher, as well as Councilmember Burgell over these years, and actually a fence and a monitor has been requested multiple times, and so I'm happy that that's actually something that is even being willing to be to happen finally. But I fail to kind of understand why an agreement from the city is necessary to get that done when other businesses have these things. It's a little bit mind-boggling to me. I have also worked with nonprofits for many years and pretty much most of my life. And this is an unusual thing to need the city to do that for the yes, to do something like that. So I'm a little, I'm not inclined to actually change my vote. I think I really appreciate what Councilmember Burgell said, and I am in agreement that at this point, until the city can get a solid plan in place of what the city wants to do with SEPs, which has not been in place, and it has clearly created problems and created all of these issues for the city, that until we can get that we probably need to take a step back and wait. And so until we can get that in place, and so if that is going, whatever that's going to take tonight to move that forward is where I would be interested in having discussion.
Okay, I'd like to give Councilmember Arroyo an opportunity to talk.
I a little bit lost my train of thought and didn't make enough notes to myself, so this might be a little jumbled, but I just, I'm going to start where it makes sense for me, which is that I may have said this before, or I may have just told Lasara that this is the issue for me. I think I'm the one person who doesn't have strong feelings about the actual issue at hand of syringe exchange in Eureka. I recognize that other people do, but I have almost completely neutral feelings about, I see the benefits and I see the downsides, but I don't have, it doesn't evoke passion for me. So when we approach this subject every single time, I think about what could we do differently that's a practical, pragmatic step that could help us try something different. Every time we come up against this wall where it's like, I can't trust you, I hate this, I fundamentally at my core feel this way or that way, I'm like, great, what could we do that's actionable? Because our job is in part to help enact changes in the city that we think need to be made in cooperation with community partners. So I don't necessarily, while I respect that people have strong feelings and have been through hell and back over this issue, I don't think our job is to go about issues of governance entirely based on our feelings. And I say that like fully recognizing that it's hard for folks. But I think we need to put our feelings in a box and say, like, what do we need to factually do as a city so that we can solve some of these problems? And when I saw this mediation agreement, first of all, Tuesday was the first that I knew that anyone didn't like it. I mean, and that's part of the function of, like, the Brown Act means that we're not like secretly talking about it behind the scenes, which I think people think we are, but we're not. And so to come on Tuesday and be fully shocked, like you could probably see my shock the entire time. I was freaking shocked because I had no idea that this didn't meet the criteria that we had been talking about because it met the things that I had heard publicly stated when we agreed to put it to mediation. So I didn't realize that there was this gap between what we had stated as far as expectations and then what, when folks really considered it and checked in with themselves, like the expectations really were. And I hear that that gap exists and recognize that it's a barrier, but I also, my greatest hope for this process moving forward is that we can give our staff clear direction about what steps we want them to take and put our feelings in a box for a little bit so that we can actually figure something out that we need to do to move forward. We know that there are benefits to what Hatcher offers to the community as far as, like, it sounds like we all have a lot of agreement around some of the non-syringe related services and non-paraphernalia related services. I don't know, sorry if that's the wrong word, paraphernalia. All of those services seem to be something we agree is important in our community. And so I think my question to you is there a way to move forward using the parts of what we've come up with here? Adjusting timelines, asking for another amendment process to be discussed. Is there something we can do so that we can actually move forward and not rehash our feelings for the 100th time? I can't do it anymore. I need us to figure out some steps. And if it's the next council that does that, then that's, if we can't get it to that point now, then okay. But I'm sort of begging you to like let the past feelings be there, but still try to find a way to move on.
So I see Councilmember Allison and Mester. I want to just do, and then Burgell, I just want to do a quick check with city manager and assistant city manager. There aren't going to be changes to this specific memo because that's negotiation and a mediation. So do we need to vote on this memo and then discuss what can go on the next agenda to discuss this? And can we do that today?
So the vote in front of you, or the motion that needs to be made, is are you willing to reconsider this item? You have already voted and the motion failed. So one of the three people who prevailed, which is Messner, Allison, and Burgell, needs to make a motion on if they wish to reconsider this item. And that's in front of you. And then we can receive direction on what by consensus on what the council would like to see on a future agenda.
It has to be by consensus on what's going to be on. So what I'm hearing is I'm not hearing any movement from any of the three, unless that's what Allison or Mester wanted to say was I changed my mind. So I'm going to listen to you two, and then maybe we can just decide if that part is done and then move on to what our next step is so that we can just put this part of it to bed. So Councilmember Allison first.
Thank you. And Councilmember Arroyo, I just want to thank you for your comments. You said a lot of great things there. And in regards to the part about feelings, to me, I think you should all know I'm a very data-oriented person. And therefore, my feelings, how I feel about Hatcher has come from data, from anecdotes, incidences where it has caused me to feel a certain way, where I just feel personally, professionally, that they are not a good enough partner for the city due to previous actions and data, so to say. So I personally am not in favor of reconsideration. I say that because I was really curious to see how today's conversation would go. With talking to the Hatcher board, seeing if they'd listen to Councilmember Burgell's wishes, because I really felt like that was the right action to take for me to at least agree to the amendment, and they said no. So I'm saying no to the reconsideration. And I guess in council reports or something like that, we'll have to find a way to craft a way to direct staff to an outcome.
No, we can do that next after we, okay. Yeah, we don't have to wait to council reports. Councilmember Messner.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that's actually what I was asking for, is that we would do something that would be moving forward, that we would make a solid plan, not just having this whatever goes go, that we would actually put into place what our goals are and what our purposes are for a step in the city, so that these issues wouldn't continue. And that's really what I was asking for. And so sometimes I can sound very passionate about what I'm asking for. And I know this has been a rough road for many people. And we have had a lot of years of trying to put into place a solid plan. And unfortunately, it's been a very, very long and uphill road to try to get that to happen. But the steps that we have gone through have been consistent. We've consistently been moving in this direction to get to the place where the city could put together a plan for what the city's desire is for a step in the city. And that's where we're at right now. And so that's what I was asking for, is that rather than trying to keep juggling what might work right now in the middle of what isn't working, which we've been doing already for 4 years, that instead we would take a step back. We finally can, because the state has stepped away and said it's up to the city now to do something, and we actually do have the ability to do that. So now let's do that and make a solid plan of what we want it to look like before moving forward with whatever the next step would be. And so that's usually how you do things, is you make a plan before you say yes to something. And so it feels like we've had the cart behind the horse, or before the horse, the whole time, the tail wagging the dog, so to speak. And I feel like we finally have the ability to write that. And so that's what I was asking for.
Okay, Councilmember Burgell.
I appreciate too, Natalie, your comments. And I would like to say that I did bring something forward, and I will bring something forward in this moment to resolve the problem. What I would like to see is that we repeal and replace the resolution we had before to state that though we do support SEPs, we want to suspend all SEPs until we figured out CEQA and we have an ordinance in place. Once that ordinance is in place, I would like to put out an RFP to syringe exchanges. Patrick can apply for that as well. But that's what I would like to see as a change. And I think that I would like to do that sooner than later.
And if I understand, that's what has been put forth to go onto the agenda. And this is a consensus thing, so we can't discuss it. We just have to say, is that what everybody wants to have?
And I would like to ask for a special meeting for this to happen with next week.
So do we have consensus that we have a special meeting to put that on the agenda and move forward?
Yes.
Okay. We do not have consensus on that. So
We have 3 council members.
So consensus isn't everybody. It's just a majority?
Correct.
Okay. I always thought consensus was consensus. So
Usually.
I think the mayor is technically correct, but I think Assistant City Manager Powell is also correct that if there's no consensus, you can do it on 3. So.
Okay, so okay. Well, if that's it, then we have a majority who wants to explore that option at a special meeting. And that's it. So we just have to schedule a special meeting then?
I think one thing that needs to happen is the motion for the reconsideration of the item has to be made.
And we have to close that?
I believe so, correct, Assistant City Manager Powell?
Is there anybody willing to put forward a motion to reconsider the proposal?
It has to be one of those 3, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There was not.
Okay.
So if there wasn't, then we don't do anything, right? We just can't move forward with that?
Correct.
Instead. Okay.
Mayor Seaman, may I make a comment about the idea of a special meeting?
It feels like we need to talk about a special meeting if we're going to do it. Is that okay? I just want to know because,
right.
Okay.
But, City Attorney Black, that's within the Brown Act to go ahead and set time and place about the special meeting, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, Councilmember Arroyo.
Next week is a really difficult week for me to set a special meeting, and my preference would be that this come forth at a regular session and be agendized as we would agendize topics of city business. Next week is going to be really tough to squeeze in a meeting because every evening I have other meetings. So that's part of why I would prefer to see it just go on our next city council agenda and I would have a really hard time getting an evening free.
I'm
willing to do it in the daytime.
I scheduled vacation next week, so I am off the whole week.
So what about the following week? Or the following week, the next meeting?
Is the next meeting.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we can do it in the daytime.
I mean,
Almost every afternoon free.
And I can make that time.
I'm still on vacation, day and night.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes. I can run the meeting.
If you can get a majority of people.
How
this
many?
doesn't feel very good.
How many?
I'm sure that you're 3 out of 5 people, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it's a public, robust process. There's almost no one here. And it's going to really, it's a big change to be asking for in a special meeting in this kind of way.
Well, I can say this, Councilmember Arroyo, we've been having these conversations. This has been going on for a very long time. And frankly, I think that our neighbors in the area need to be listened to and that they need to be supported. I did offer some solutions to Hatcher, a way that we could work together. I did take that time.
Wait, I think we're doing discussion now. We're not
to try and figure something out.
Discussing anymore. I think we're just supposed to be.
I'm just saying.
It's.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Castellano, is this about scheduling the meeting?
It is. Thank you. Well, I guess it's about how I feel about scheduling the meeting. But I think it falls within the category, so I'm going to go for it. I feel very concerned about this as a manipulation of public process. I feel like this is a fact. We have 2 exiting council members that are basically had ample opportunity to work towards something like this over the last year, and knew that there was a mediation happening, could easily have done many things to move this forward, and are now, I think, trying to.
I feel like we're beyond talking about scheduling the meeting. So now what I need to know from
it, what I want to say is I feel this disrespects public process around such a pivotal issue.
But can you make a meeting next week? Are you available for a meeting next week? I think that is the question.
Am I?
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Okay, so
can I get my calendar? Can I go get my calendar? Because I didn't know we were going to be doing this.
Everybody should get their calendar.
Question for Pam. So just about the public process. I mean, according to the Brown Act, you need 3 days notice, 2 days notice to have any meeting.
For 24 hours for a special meeting.
Okay.
We're following public process. It's why we had this special meeting.
Yes. So
just noting that.
So hypothetically, if we schedule it sometime next week, there'd be way more than 24 hours notice.
Yeah, I would get the notice out tomorrow.
Okay. So now we need to see who is available.
I guess if we were crafting a resolution and I could get the notice out tomorrow, but as far as the resolution, you would have to get, that would be on City Attorney Black and the city manager. So the agenda summary may not be ready until, the first of the week, but we can get the notice out early.
So it would have to be at least Tuesday to give you time to get the resolution written and noticed. And you would have to have the resolution done by Monday to get it noticed by Tuesday?
City Attorney Black, would that be that the resolution would need to be out for 24 hours prior to a special meeting, because that's what we would be discussing and considering. Is that correct?
Well, I think under the Brown Act, the resolution needs to be made public at the same time as it's given to the council members.
Yes.
So
Okay.
theoretically, you could post an agenda that lists the action, that a short description of the action to be taken. The resolution itself could actually be delivered at the meeting, as long as it was made available to the public then. That may not be ideal, and we would strive not to do it that way. I also am wondering whether there's a specific resolution to be brought forward, or would that be one of, and we would of course bring a draft of it forward, would that be one of some recommended actions or alternative recommended actions that staff might come up with before the meeting? So.
Councilmember Burgell, I think, has.
Yeah.
So what I would like to see in the ordinance, or the resolution, is that we repeal and replace the resolution that we had before to state that though we do support SEPs, we want to suspend all SEPs until we get CEQA. I mean, this wouldn't be the language, of course, but get CEQA worked out and have a new ordinance in place. Does that make sense?
We can certainly prepare that resolution. Yeah.
Okay, and so, and then what is the date that we could, the earliest that we can plan the meeting so that people can look at their calendars and see if they're available?
Well, it might be one option. I think it can be done by Tuesday night if you wanted to have a 5 o'clock special meeting on Tuesday.
I can't do the only day I could do is Thursday and on the later side.
At like 7:30 again?
Yeah.
Thursday can work.
Friday? Or in the afternoon on Tuesday or Wednesday at an earlier time?
I work until my meetings.
Okay.
I'm fine with Thursday, and that'll give plenty of time for the public process for people to see the agenda and make times to comment and think about it.
Mm-hmm. I can do any day but Tuesday, unless we did late on Tuesday. So
Sounds like Thursday at 7:30.
I could even do 7. I don't know if that matters for anybody, but that's
7:30 would be better for me. I'll be driving home from Oakland.
7.
Better. We'll be in the hospital that day.
Oh,
Councilmember Castellano, can you do it on that day?
Yeah.
Okay, so 7:30 on Thursday looks like the time that can work.
okay. So the process, can I ask a question about the process? So Attorney Black, I know you mentioned, so if the resolution is brought forward and we vote on it, and then if it passes, then it would be a second reading, is that correct? So we'd have to do 2 meetings, is that what you're saying? I can't hear you.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh,
A resolution can be passed in the course of just one meeting, takes effect immediately.
Okay, great.
Or it can also take effect whenever you say it takes effect. So you could also delay the effective of the resolution.
Okay. I was just trying to get a timeline, like if we were looking at needing to do another meeting or something like that, because just wanted to make sure.
Well, not inherently, as you know, it does take more than one meeting generally to do an ordinance.
Okay.
So, but
Since it's a resolution, it would not. Great.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, well, this matter, oh,
I have a question. Do staff feel that they understand the intent of the resolution fully? I'm not sure I do. So I was wondering if we can be clear about what we're asking to have brought forward.
Yeah, I think it's a relatively minor adjustment. I mean, the resolution that we currently have now is just basically in support of SEPs in general. And I think not much of that needs to change. I think there just needs to be a clause added that states that either immediately or at a certain time frame, the SEPs are temporarily not allowed in the city of Eureka limits until an ordinance can be put in place, which would obviously include having to go through CEQA.
And so that would apply to the county as well. The county's exchange.
The county doesn't have to follow our jurisdiction.
Roger.
The county
Okay.
could still operate. Now, if Aegis was in fact operating, I'm not sure whether they are or not, but they wouldn't be able to operate either. But according
they
to
don't do exchange, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's what Executive Director Allen said, yes.
okay. So I think that we can move on now to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. And good evening again, Mayor and council members. Just a couple of things. I wanted to update you guys on some of the COVID related protocols that we've done here with the city. When we went to purple, we made some adjustments that were related to our field staff. Did alternate schedules so that people aren't mixing as much and being around each other as much. And more recently now, with the news from the governor today, we've made some further changes, which will include significantly limiting only those staff that need to be at City Hall at City Hall. Also having all public interactions, including water billing, be done by appointment only. And then on top of that, we're restricting people into their office space, having them not enter the office space, and all meetings now, even within the building or within any city facility, are to be done in your office by Zoom. And so those are some of the changes that we've made. We've also made changes to the mail room and made it so that it's not such a tight space and have the mail be available in the hallway. Obviously practicing social distancing, wearing masks, and all the other protocols, and also increasing sanitation and getting rid of any communal coffee areas. So those are some of the changes that we've made. And I don't believe there'll be a city manager's report at this next special meeting. And so what I'd like to do is really thank Councilmember Allison, Councilmember Messner for their service here for City Council. They will not be at the following meeting when the other council members are sworn in. And I just want to say that it's been a pleasure working with you guys. It's been a pleasure for our staff. And I think a lot of good things have happened over the 4 years that you guys have been here. And I just wanted to go through some of those things. In September of 2016, you guys were responsible for passing our cannabis regulations. And to date today, we've had over 40 plus businesses operating currently. It's created over 200 jobs. It's generated over $1 million in permit fees for the city of Eureka's revenue. And it's resulted in over $25 million in improvements to buildings within the city limits. You guys are responsible for enacting the Sunshine Ordinance for additional transparency for government proceedings. You put forth successful ballot measures for the True Ward and ranked choice voting. We're here when we finalized the construction of the $11 million waterfront trail that opened in February of 2018. We executed a unique marketing contract for Eureka-centric tourism, constructed 2 new waterfront parks and a dog park along our waterfront, developed a one-of-a-kind municipal social services program and uplift that includes our Pathway to Payday program, job skills training, and housing assistance, which since October of 2019 it housed over 60 community members in the city of Eureka. Developed a one-of-a-kind policing program in CSET. secured funding for and constructed the Redwood Skywalk at Sequoia Park Zoo, which will be opening in the beginning of 2021. You worked with RCEA, to attract offshore wind energy project to our area. We worked with the California League of Cities Coastal Group to present progressive sea level rise adaptation plan to the Coastal Commission. We formed a nonprofit, the Cape Fund, to manage and operate the Eureka Municipal Golf Course and maintain rates that are reasonable for our residents. Completed the 20-year-old Martin Slough Enhancement Project on the golf course to enhance fish habitat and reduce flooding. Completed the 20-year-old Waterfront Drive Connection Project, creating a contiguous alternative route for Highway 101, and developed and adopted the 2040 General Plan. And finally, you were responsible for the return of the remainder of the Duluwat Island to the Wiyot tribe, which has gained national recognition. Not only professionally, I really appreciated working with you guys, but personally, the times that we had at the conferences at the League of City were very entertaining. I doubt that I will ever be on a dual scooter with another council member in the evening. So thank you guys very much for your service, and staff and the community really are better off for it. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
very nice. Thank you, Miles. And now we are going to go to council reports. So we will go ahead and start with Councilmember Allison.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Miles, for just sort of reminding all the work we've done over the past 4 years, even for the council members who will continue to stay on. I just want to thank the city staff for who they are. They are a scrappy bunch of people, always fighting despite lack of resources to do the best they can for the city. It's a wonderful team. I almost feel like a lot of the staff there is, family. It's just such a good team of people there. And I want to also thank the rest of the city council. I know we don't always see eye to eye like tonight. I know probably a few of you are upset with me, but that's okay. We will never see eye to eye because we come from all walks of life. And it has been nothing but an honor and a pleasure to serve the city of Eureka and its constituents. And I just want to thank the voters for putting me up there. And I've always just tried to do the best I can from the data that's available and to just make decisions that I think are always in the best interest of the city and its residents. I've grown to love the city even more than I had before, just getting to know it so intimately. And you can't get rid of me. I'll be around. So if you ever need to talk to someone, I'll be here. So thank you, everyone, and best wishes to you.
Thank you, Austin. Councilmember Messner.
Thank you so much. I guess I want to first say it's just been a joy to serve on the council for the past 4 years and to work with staff and the council members. I've actually really enjoyed the time that we've had, and the mayors as well, both mayors that have been a part of the council since I've been in office. And you forgot a couple things, Miles, like the digestive cover for the water treatment facility. I mean, come on, how could you forget about that? I know that was like a big project, but it was, who wants to talk about poop? But that is something that we had to deal with. It was a big deal when I first came on council and had been delayed for a long time. But we also were declared a California Historic Arts City by the state of California. And we've increased a lot of homeless services like waterfront recovery and Betty Chen's Container Village, and over 100 of previously houseless folks from that have been housed and contributing members of our community now. We put in bathrooms in Old Town, new bathrooms. Like, I kept thinking about all these different things that we've done over this time. We've increased housing for seniors and veterans and homeless, low income and affordable housing. So we've worked really hard. I know the Eureka Visitor Center was put in as well. And there were the Thursday night concerts and Friday night markets that have been a huge success that also came into the city. And it's been such a joy to work with everyone on all of these projects, and some that we were very intimately involved with pushing through for many years, and seeing these come through. And I am very proud of the work that we've done. And I know that COVID-19 has created a large challenge and also revealed the powerful resilience and collaboration within our community. And I am just proud of the ways that we have worked together to mitigate these challenging times, and I'm thankful that I get to live and work and serve in a community that is that works together and truly wants the best for the city. And so I'm thankful for that. And one last thing is that I hope everyone had a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving, because I know that we didn't get to talk about that yet, but it was great to see all of those who participated in the Lager Gobbler event at Carson Park last week. And there were 100 runners out there over that week and participating, and it was good to see the people out there when I was out doing it. And it's just another example of how we just continue to be resilient even in the midst of challenges that come our way. So thank you very much for making this a joy to be a part of.
Thank you. Councilmember Burgell.
The only thing that I really have to report is that I got to spend some time down at Free Meal on Thanksgiving. Councilmember Castellano was there. She's everywhere. So that's always such a blessing and such a treat to be able to engage with people and connect with people. I really appreciate all the work that they've done to bring that up to a place where, you know, it's way different with the partnership with CSET and all of the changes that have happened. And those folks work tirelessly. And with COVID, they have worked beyond tirelessly to make sure that people are fed. So I really appreciate everything that they do. And I'm grateful that I got to be a part of that. And then secondly, I would just say, gosh, you know, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance. Be safe. Our numbers are incredibly skyrocketing, and it's kind of scary. So please keep all those things in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Royal.
I first want to say best wishes to our departing council members. I think it's always incredibly important to see people run for civic office and participate in the ways that you have. And I know you both, in some ways, decided to run under unusual circumstances. So thank you for stepping up and doing your civic duty and then some. And I look forward to seeing you around in the community after this. We're all neighbors here. And obviously we'll see you next week again. So this isn't goodbye in this setting, but I have been continuing to be on Coast Guard duty, contact tracing, and I can say that you know, while the Coast Guard is still able to fulfill all its operational missions, it's not without impact, and the Coast Guard as is everywhere. And so the realities of Thanksgiving are becoming apparent, and you know, and what the implications are of people gathering. So it's not going to be an easy next few months, but here we all are. As for other committees, commissions, events, the Humboldt Transit Authority meeting was yesterday, and the period for taking unmet transit need reports and requests from the community is open right now. It's an annual process, and if anyone has an unmet transit need that they would like to tell me about, I can relay that information to the Humboldt County Association of Governments, or HCOG. That information can also be brought to the next HCOG meeting. And actually, did that just happen, Mayor Seaman? Or is it next week?
What can be bring into the HCOG meeting for the what?
When's the next HCOG meeting?
It's going to be on the 19th,
Okay, thank you.
I think. We have a special meeting coming up on the 8th, but that I don't think is relevant.
Okay, I think the unmet transit needs hearing will be at the next regular meeting. So folks can make those comments live via Zoom or contact HCOG staff or myself. I'd be happy to relay any unmet transit needs. And then there's a process they go through to determine whether any are reasonable to meet. And so I look forward to hearing from the community about that. It's been a difficult time for transit, just ridership is low. And so the HTA has really stepped up since the beginning of the pandemic, stepped up cleaning and sanitizing of buses very frequently and is using as many precautions as possible. So hoping to give folks the utmost confidence in our transit system. And there's an effort to look at hydrogen powered buses, hydrogen electric buses, as a way to meet the longer haul route needs for buses that go throughout the county and not just in the sort of Humboldt Bay area. And so the existing electric buses can serve the Humboldt Bay area and some of the mainline of Redwood Transit System, but the Willow Creek bus and Southern Humboldt, it's not quite enough charge for them. But in the future, it looks like all electrified fleets are the way of the future. And so looking at alternatives that can, alternative energy sources to create electricity aboard the buses and also have enough fuel for those long haul trips is going to be more and more important. So you can see, look for that coming soon. And I'd like to thank City Manager Slattery for working with me on identifying styles of potential new bus stops and or bus shelters, excuse me, and seating, and looking to work together with between the city and Humboldt Transit Authority to improve some of the facilities at our bus stops so that people have a nice shelter and they're aesthetically pleasing. And so hopefully we'll see that come to fruition soon as well. So thank you for working with me on that. And I think that is all I have to report. I talked about the Klamath River at the last meeting, but things are cranking as far as the dam removal, and so I'm honored to be a part of that and excited to see it move forward.
So I just want to make one comment about the unmet transit needs. I think that was the last meeting that they collected it for this year. However, they take it all year long. So if you ever have an unmet transit need, if you want to turn it into HCOG, they'll keep it for the next report.
Okay, so, thank you. Yeah, the HTA meeting yesterday, they were still collecting it. So I think it may be still for a little bit of time to come. So
maybe
if people want to get those in, get them in now. I'm sure a ton of people are watching this meeting, but have any ideas, please put them my way and I'll be happy to get them in as well.
Perfect. They're always taking them anyways. All righty, Councilmember Castellano.
Let's see. Firstly, thank you, Councilmember Allison and Councilmember Messner, for your service to our community. It's been really, just kind of a fascinating team that slash group. Well, maybe it's inappropriate to say council as a team, but it's being on council and experiencing the articulation of difference and engagement with our community is rewarding, and it's been a pleasure to be part of that experience with you both. So thank you for that. In terms of work in the community, though most of it happens from my house now, I still seem to be pretty busy. In fact, most all of it happens from my house on Zoom. But let's see. In addition, I just want to speak. A lot of my free time is renovating a 100-plus-year-old building here in Eureka. So that's just on a personal level. I'm enjoying contributing to the community in that way, and appreciate all the other people out there also with their home projects during this time. I continuing to meet as a member of the REDAC Executive Committee, in which it's really exciting just to hear new ventures going forward that build kind of quirky economic possibilities that I think we're really going to enjoy. Let's see, I'm attending the California Economic Summit, and today I attended a session specifically on building inclusive economies, and I'll probably have more to say about that later. I continue to participate in a housing working group, which is looking at like a wide variety of housing needs, everything from like building equity through home ownership models to artist housing to low income housing to housing for medical professionals. Let's see, I'm newly on the St. Vincent de Paul board, so that's been an exciting new prospect, and I just appreciate all the work folks do down there. Let's see, continuing to do some arts advocacy and meeting with a group of 40 performing arts organizations across the state on performing arts guidelines and really how to support performers and artists during a pandemic in which many people have lost their income. So if you, I do want to say, if you get the chance to shop local, please shop local, shop in Eureka, support an artist. There's so many fantastic artist-run businesses here in our town, and it's a great time to look them up and buy something for them, from them, or for them, you know, whichever. And then also, I hosted a regional arts leadership meeting. I host that once a month. And I just want to thank Jim Wood's local representative, Aaron Dunn, who came to this week's meeting and really listened to arts leaders from the entire Redwood region. And I just appreciate the time she spent with us. And I think there's going to be some good forward movement there on really building that regional strength and collaboration in the arts community.
Thank you. So then before we leave tonight, I also want to say thank you to council members Allison and Messner. I know they have one more meeting, but I don't think I'm going to be there. So this is my last time with you guys. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for teaching me when I came on. And I expect to see you around all over. So this isn't goodbye. It's just that we don't have to sit through these really long meetings together anymore. And with that, I will say good evening to everybody.
Good evening. Your dog is saying goodbye too behind you, Mayor Cindy.
He was sitting there with just his butt out for a while. So. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Natalie's got a dog too.
Oh, look how cute.
So cute.
I thought maybe it was dog show and tell time, so I started that.
Does your dog shed? Does it shed?
No, he has hair, not fur, I think. He doesn't shed very much.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
That's awesome that doesn't shed.
He's actually very, very, very well behaved.
Wow, thank you.
Yes.
See y'all later. Take care.
Goodbye,
Bye,
goodbye, Heidi. While we're both still here, goodbye.
Thank you. Yes, sure appreciate you. I guess we're gonna have another meeting, but that's why I was asking, like, how many meetings are we gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, thanks for teaching me how to play cornhole.
Aww.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that before.
So fun.
And I was remiss. I didn't thank you either, Heidi. But as you know, I appreciate have been appreciating our time together. So
Yes, and I don't think it's gonna end.
No, I've learned a lot.
It's a great council. Great council.
It has been. All right, friends. Thank you, and I'm out.
All right. Thank you, Pam, too.
Hey, do you notice my color of my kitchen, you guys? It's sunlit green. This is the color of one of our city colors.
Oh, it is. Hi, Austin.
It's happy. So anyway, talk to you guys later.
I like the flowers.
Oh, that's my kids. That's my kids. How